a lot of them were from kind of socially, economically disadvantaged backgrounds. And it was actually them that had challenged me on the, why do you not see yourself as partner? My name is Aisling McCaffrey. I am a chartered accountant and I currently work as an associate director in financial services consulting with Grant Thornton. This year I was selected as a co-chartered star and represented Chartered Accountants Ireland at the One Young World Summit in Munich. I can happily say that I never really knew what I wanted to be growing up. I went from, one day wanting to be a vet to a physio to a professional musician. I kind of grew up, had lots of ambitions, but never really had that one defined career path. And I was quite jealous, I think, of some of my friends that, knew they wanted to be doctors and teachers. I just never quite knew. So ended up doing a degree in actuarial and financial studies in UCD. At the time, there wasn't that many people doing actuary in Ireland. So the careers advisor suggested it was a good way to go. I went off down to Dublin. That was a 4-year degree. It was great and pretty hard going, quite tough, very technical. And so when I got to the end of it again, I was a little bit, at sea as to, was this really the right thing for me to do? Yeah, so I guess with school, I was always a big fan of I played quite a lot of sport and music and, I loved school. I never really had that kind of issue where I didn't want to go to school. I always really wanted to go. My friends were there. I had a really good network of friends. And when I got to, secondary school, I think I just connected really well with even our teachers. We had a really good set of teachers where they just really encourage conversation and discussion. And I was probably lucky enough that I was, relatively academic. So it wasn't necessarily that much of a struggle for me in terms of, going through some of the classes, but I just had a really good support network around me in school. So yeah, my favorite subjects were definitely music. It's something, my whole family plays some sort of instrument or sings or just has a real love for music. So that's something that's been ingrained for me since I was very little, from my granddad teaching me how to play the tin whistle when I was 3. I always have a real passion for music. And I think in a strange way, there's some sort of crossover there. It's definitely been talked about before, but there's definitely some sort of crossover with kind of music, maths. I was also kind of into computer programming. I think there's some strange logic that connects all of those things. My brain definitely works in that way. So I took off and went to Australia for a couple of months and did some traveling. So when I was in Australia, then I actually did some work with the charity while I was over there. And I became really good friends with one of the founders when I was there. And I just had a really good conversation with her about, I was looking at maybe doing a master's in humanitarian action. And we just had a chat about it. She was like, look, you can do that. It's going to be pretty intense. There was a lot of politics and conflict resolution. And I hadn't realistically written an essay since I'd been in school. So it was going to be a fairly significant jump for me to go into that. And her advice was really, stick with what you know, stick with what you're good at. Figure out what your strengths are, because it's a little bit hard when you come out of college. You've just spent 4 years learning things, but you don't necessarily know, what you're good at yourself personally. So that's where the accountancy piece came in, where she was like, look, there's lots of, general business in that. There'll be a bit of law, there'll be a bit of tax, there'll be a bit of everything. So yeah, I came back, did a bit of research, not a huge amount of research, but basically said, look, we'll go for chartered accountancy. Went to apply for some graduate programs, which were all closed because it was May, and everyone had applied the previous September. But by chance, Grant Thornton had left their application system open. I think it was an accident, but I applied anyway, and I got a response saying, I'll get an interview in November. And I was like, what? And then I got a phone call from HR saying, I'm not really sure how you managed to apply through the system, but we're by chance a new director had come in and they were looking for a trainee. So I got called in for interview, and I got the job. So that's basically how I started as a trainee accountant then in Grant Thornton. I would have joined Grant Thornton in the recovery and reorganization department at the time. So would have worked mainly in receiverships and liquidations, worked with lots of different clients. That's when I started looking at, what I was doing day to day. And I was like, okay, is there anything else I can be doing here? Spoke to a few people around GT and had a look then at kind of the consulting side of the house. Because I always really enjoyed interacting with people, whether it was kind of our agents or clients. I really liked that kind of relationship building piece. So the consultant for me was like a good kind of shift for me to move into financial services, take everything I'd learned in receiverships and liquidations, but kind of move more into a client-facing role where it was projects and project management. So that's where I am today. Really, is I've been in GT for 8 years now. Yeah, so I guess I work in a few different things outside of my kind of day-to-day client work with GT. So at the moment, I would be a committee member with the Next Gen committee of 100 Women in Finance in Dublin. So there's 6 of us on the committee at the moment. And what we would do is we'd organise kind of educational events during the year. We'd have about 4 or 5 events during the year that would cover a range of different topics from ESG. We did a really good series last year that looked at kind of senior women in financial services, and we did kind of one-on-one interviews with them to talk about their journey and what they'd learned. And it's just really to try and create that network and empower other women in financial services, I guess. And then alongside that, this year I've done some work with a team. We ran a competition in Grant Thornton for Sustainathon, and the winning team from that, I helped them co-found the Green Team Network. So we've set up this network to try and connect firms across the Irish funds industry, and it's really to try and promote information sharing and a more kind of sustainable way of doing business. So looking at, there's some firms that have large amount of resources. They have whole teams dedicated to whether it's sustainability reporting or green teams in their firms, and we just want to really help share that resource and knowledge sharing and encourage people to talk to each other across the funds industries. What did I see my career progression being? And I was like, oh yeah, we'll just see. And I was asked, did I see myself being partner in the future? And at one point my answer was just no, but I didn't really have a good backup for that. The answer was just a straight no until someone pointed it out to me and they were like, why not? And I had to kind of sit and think about it. And at some point I realized, I think it was that lack of seeing someone who looked like me visibly, and just not picturing myself in that role. It was quite easy to discount myself from that role. And I think for other people, the reason I kind of had that conversation, I was doing some mentoring with work. So I was working with a few kids, and a lot of them were from kind of socially, economically disadvantaged backgrounds. And it was actually them that had challenged me on the, why do you not see yourself as partner? And I think I kind of had a moment talking to them where I was like, these kids are really, working very hard to, get a leg up and try and get into this program. It was in Trinity University, an access program. And they haven't come from, a great background, and they are working against it. And, they're looking at me as someone who maybe they see hasn't really struggled, has, gone through the system, has got their degree. And yet the message I'm giving them is that, I don't really see myself as partner or progressing to a higher level. And that's kind of what caught me. I was like, all right, I could be a visual role model to them. So I need to be, I need to change my own attitude and really push myself forward. So so I guess too, the other thing, so I'm part of the Irish Task Force for FinBiz 2030, which is the initiative that's been set up in accordance with One Young World and Chartered Accountants Worldwide. And it's looking to kind of bring groups of people together to tackle SDGs. So at the moment, I would be a project lead for one of the work streams. And our main focus is on gender equality and also reduced inequalities as well. So what we're looking at the moment is the possibility of setting up a structured kind of mentoring program with Chartered Accountants Ireland. So kind of leveraging that network and with an initial focus probably on the trainee accountants, and just encouraging peer-to-peer networking. And yeah, so we're kind of working through that at the moment. And then separately, I'm also on the board of the Irish Touch Rugby Association, because as I said before, I play quite a good bit of sport. So I've represented Ireland a couple of times at this stage. So I'm on the board at the moment, and I guess my main focus there is really to push for the inclusion of women in sport, and make sure that that's represented when we're having our discussions and we're looking at initiatives that we want to push forward in our partnership with the RFU, the Irish Rugby Federation.
Thank you for listening to the Young Difference Makers podcast. You can listen to other podcasts in this series, and you can head over to our website to find out more. We're at charteredaccountantsworldwide.com. We're also on Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you choose to listen to your podcasts. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. It will really help us get the word out there. Talk to you again soon, and thanks for listening.